So hello everybody and welcome to my next Get a Life Moment episode. Today I'm joined all the way from Canada, would you believe, by KG Johnston. Now, otherwise known as Ken, is an author, a coach, a leadership specialist. He's really worked in large organisations understanding the culture. But when you hear about his book and his journey, it's kind of a little bit different to what you would expect. In fact, I first came across him through LinkedIn and he offered me a copy of his book to read. And I was on holiday with my husband at the time in Mauritius. And I was laid on my sunbed reading this book on my Kindle. Keep saying to my hubby, you've got to read this, you've got to read this. This is what it's all about. So let's find out a little bit more. Welcome, KG. How are you?
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. I'm well. Thanks for that great intro. And yeah, the book that I sent to you was this one, just in case people are wondering.
Yeah.
It's the first one I wrote. It's called The Way of Effortless Leadership, Ancient Secrets on Cultivating a Culture of Trust, Engagement, and Flow.
Yeah.
And it bridges a lot of the new science with ancient mysticism and nature. So it was meant for leaders and the leader within to understand a little bit more about how we might choose a different model of leadership moving forward. And especially in this time of COVID, with everybody stuck at home, all of the systems have been breaking down over the years. Our organizations are challenged to the nth degree. And my second book, which should be out by the end of the year, is going to be called Remember You're Me.
Yeah.
And it's basically an adventure into non-ordinary reality and back. And it was based on my adventure going down to South America and sitting with shamans and learning about their wisdom. And bringing that back, it takes it at a deeper level than even my first book, although it's part fiction, but it's mostly real. And during this time of COVID, the shamans have this prophecy of the condor and the eagle.
Right, okay.
And 500 years ago, before the Spanish came down and conquered everything in South America, their shamans knew that there would be this period of 500 years where there would be this kind of breakdown. Mm-hmm. And the eagle is considered to be the mind of North America. And their big bird is the condor, which is the way of the heart. Their way is definitely the way of the heart down there. So we're at this time of transition that they call the time of Taripe or Pacha, Taripe Pacha. In this time of huge transformation. And we're seeing it now with COVID.
Yeah.
And I actually had a premonition about this COVID when I was down there a couple of years ago in Ecuador. So it'll be a fascinating conversation today.
Wow. I mean, just reading the first book, obviously I'm really excited for the next one, but just reading the first book, the thing that struck me is this is a book of our time. It really is a book of our time. And at that point, well, although you'd had the premonition, at that time when I was reading it, it would have been last October. I couldn't have imagined what we were going to go into, but it sounded like it was just perfect timing to rereading that book. And it just mirrored so much of the things that we put into our leadership retreats. And this felt to be a real synergy. And I know before we came on live, we were talking about this difference between scarcity and abundance. And I think what I picked up in your book was very much about the way of nature and the way that nature is abundance. I think it might be quite interesting to delve into that a little bit more, actually, because I think people might find that really interesting to hear.
Thanks, Lisa. Yes, and actually the inspiration for the book was I'd had a dream. This is going back about 10 years ago. And I was in the big city and I had a dream one night that woke me up at 3 a.m. Of this vision of being on the West Coast and doing something completely different and being inspired by something new and also following love. And it was such a profound dream that I actually ended up following it and moving out there. And I ended up living on an island off the West Coast of Canada, surrounded by nature for a number of years, some difficult times. But during those times, the real gift to me was witnessing nature's abundance
Mm-hmm.
and its way of effortless flow. And the Taoists have a principle which is nature-based called effortless action, or Wu Wei. And I witnessed this firsthand, and that was really the inspiration about how leaders can do things differently, how we can do things completely differently in our own lives with less struggle, with less stress. And it's basically based on the way of nature, and that's the seen nature. The second book is actually based on the unseen part of nature, what's underneath everything. And
this, I guess, is an innate wisdom, isn't there? I know, just as I mean, it's not quite living on an island off the coast of Canada, but when I'm walking down the lanes near where we live in the countryside, and often I've said to my husband, John, I said, you know, all of the things that we're experiencing in life right now, we might go on to talk about that, some of the separation, the division that we're seeing, you don't see that in nature. Nature doesn't fight one another. You know, in the hedgerows, you've got all sorts of plants and berries and things growing, and they know when it's their time and they flow with their time. You don't see the trees saying, whoa, no, I'm not letting go of those leaves. I'm scarcity, I might not get any more leaves, so I'm not letting go of these. You know, they just let their leaves flow into the ground. They then feed the ground in order, you know, and it's cyclical and it just flows. And so I've observed this as well in my own small way. And I think it's those types of things that I kind of thought, why do we effort and struggle against that as leaders, as people, as human beings? So
I think, sorry.
No, go on. Yeah.
I think man's way has always been to try to look impressive, to separate ourselves from nature. And that very separation, in addition to buying into Darwin's theory of evolution, we've misunderstood that it's all been about this extreme competition, when really he said most of what nature does is all about collaboration, cooperation. Yes, there's competition, or it's more about survival. But as a whole, when you look at the holistic part of it, there isn't that separation. Everything works, as you say, holistically. But by thinking that we're separate, we're never separate, but it's acknowledging that. We create a sense of loneliness for ourselves, a sense of ego, fear and separation from others. And we hoard, we force, we control, we try to dominate as a way of denying that we are that nature, essentially. And sorry.
Go on, sorry, carry on.
No, it's just exciting, actually. But so our way, man's way, or humanity's way, is more a mindless way of doing, really, and a mechanical way that's based on more Newtonian type of physics. Like, it's all material against material, whereas nature's way is really an awareness, a way of being, an energy. And Einstein, his theory of relativity, that E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. There's only three things in the natural world, really: energy, mass, and light. And the atom, which is supposedly the smallest, or one of the smallest particles, there are smaller ones, but is 99.99999% just energy and void, or space. There's so little, when you think about what is really real underneath it all. It isn't mass. It is energy and information that informs everything. And that is the way of the shaman. That is the way of the Taoists, all the mystics, the way of the Vedics, that talk about Maya, which is this veil of separation between our material world and really what's behind it.
And it's just an illusion, isn't it? It's just an illusion.
It is. It's a complete illusion, and that's it. And this is what I'm trying to get across to leaders and just to people in general.
And it's quite an interesting leap, isn't it? I mean, how did your journey take you from obviously being a coach and working inside corporate organizations? How did your journey take you to where you are? Because there's lots of metaphors to the things that we're talking about that people will be aware of in business, in organizations, where they'll say, you know, the boss, it's lonely at the top. And we've just said, well, yeah, that's that separation, that competition that is created by man. But actually, where business and business people are collaborating, where they're compassionate, where they're loving, where they're in flow with one another, you know, it really works. So how did you get from that very business place to where we are? And how do we move forward with people and leaders to embrace what we're talking about here?
It's a really good question. Well, I went into a lot of organizations that were downsizing, changing, letting go of people. So I would meet with the HR managers, the senior leadership, help with the plan in terms of change, and then also coach the people that were leaving, and sometimes the people that were staying as well. And I saw that so few leaders were doing things well. It was a very small percentage. What happened with the leaders were that they were focusing on techniques and information and trying to ensure that all of this stuff would happen during change. And they would forget about their people and being with them. There were some organizations where they had been very good at being with their people. And as soon as the major change started happening, they separated themselves, hold themselves away because they were fearful. And they broke the relationship that they had with their people. And that was the very time they needed to do more of that, just being with their people, because that's a time when people feel the most fearful. But also, I was trained in Wu style Tai Chi. So I've trained in that. I'm a disciple of Eddie Wu, and my training in that has shown me how to apply Taoist principles in a physical way, in an energetic way. And there were lessons that I'd learned about nature through that as well. And I've done yoga for many years. I brought that mystical sort of aspect in, as well as meditation. So it was a combination of things that all started to gel together, and I started seeing the commonality. And then again, all the new science that has come out, epigenetics, quantum physics, string theory, all of this stuff suggests that we really do have a veil separating us from what's really underlying nature, which is just information and vibration, energy in space. And so the new way of leadership is not about technique and force and control. It's about using sensitivity, awareness that happens by meditating and being inspired literally by nature. And then fanning that out to the rest of an organization in terms of creating a culture of awareness. I also do, what I'm into now is hypnotherapy, which also is nature-based, because we operate out of our conscious mind so much, but we don't do on a daily basis. And when we master something, we're in a state of basically, what am I thinking of? Unconscious competence.
Yeah.
And when we're unconsciously competent, we're using our subconscious. Our subconscious is going to work, and that's that level of mastery. So I help people in terms of, and leaders with tapping into their subconscious so that they're able to be more creative, create some new habits for themselves, some new joy. And it's a very effective way to bypass that conscious mind, which is man's way, and delve into nature's way.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if we apply that to maybe what we're seeing in leaders around the world at the moment, we've got quite a contrast, haven't we, going on? It just stimulates thought there that we've got some leaders that are taking that very much command, control, separate. And then there are other leaders. I think the leader in New Zealand, we were one that really springs to mind, who's
She's
coming
brilliant.
very much from this place of the heart, through compassion, through collaboration. From the outside looking in, obviously I'm not living there, but this is what I'm seeing that I think is moving much more towards the flow of leadership, rather than in other parts of the world, we're seeing very much a command, control and separate, aren't we?
I think you're bang on. In fact, the Taoist way the real power in Taoism and nature is in the yin, which is the feminine, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And in the shamanic way, it's the same thing. The power is in Pachamama, which is Mother Earth, essentially. It is the real power is in the feminine way. It doesn't mean it has to be a woman, but we are then going into that time of Karape, Pacha. We're going out of a male form of leadership into a more feminine. So the fact that you're focusing on the leader from New Zealand, I've been impressed with her too. She seems to do things quite effortlessly.
Yes. Yes.
And whereas other ones, like we look at all of the things that have happened over the years, we've had financial crisis in 2008. We've had, the Black Lives Matter movement recently. We've had Me Too. All of these things, which are just saying whatever we're doing is just not working, and people aren't feeling valued.
Yeah.
The whole Black Lives Matter, the Me Too, all of this, there's a craving for people that are screaming, I matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All about, and that I matter is what the Vedics and yoga talk about as being an Atman, which is essentially like a drop in the ocean of transcendent reality. So an Atman is you and me, and we are exactly the same as nature's way, as that transcendent reality. And so much of this is about just making a conscious choice about how we perceive the world. And once we make that conscious choice, we treat people as valuable beings and not cogs in a wheel, or just consumers wanting to purchase stuff, or things to use in business to achieve goals. We treat them as truly valuable beings.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think about the shift from human doings to human beings, or as the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer would say, from ambition to meaning. So it kind of makes me think of all of that. I mean, it's there. It's in all of these ancient systems. Even in astrology, we're moving out of the age of Capricorn into the age of Aquarius. Now that's been happening over a long period of time, but we really are moving into the age of Aquarius. So, it's
right.
all there for us, whichever system you're looking at.
Right.
The universe, nature is showing us that, we're shifting into a new way of being.
Well, yeah, exactly. And right now, in addition, like from a corporate perspective, like for leaders that are out there, that 80% of business initiatives fail. You change. That's a huge amount, 80 plus usually. Employee engagement has remained flat for many, many years. Billions and billions have spent in many corporations. They can't get employees engaged. The model has been incorrect because it's not motivating people. We need this new form of leadership. Also, mental health disability type claims have been skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Because people aren't feeling valued truly for who they are. So it's really just a perceptual shift. And if we do that in how we see each other and we see nature, the power is tremendous. Like looking back at corporations too, over the last 20 years, 30 years, CEOs now make 300 times the average wage of an employee. They have gotten richer and richer, whereas the average employee generally has remained flat in terms of their wages. Advertising, treats us as solely consumers. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Lisa, before, but Alfie Kohn, this man who wrote this book, No Contest, back in the 80s, he brings everything down to our society being so competitive focused. And he said that competition creates scarcity where there is none in nature. And I think with this new feminine model that you talked about, it's more a collaborative, more a way of using awareness. And even corporations now, 25% of the major corporations now have some form of mindfulness program in them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, that's a huge percentage. It's starting to creep in because they know that it makes their people so much more effective.
Yeah.
They make more profits, but there'll be a deeper realization in time, the more that that hook onto this. And that's really what I'm trying to encourage with this, with the first book. The second book is just an adventurous ride into non-ordinary reality and back. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know that in our leadership programs, we include a mindful leader module. And it allows people to be more present. It allows people to make more conscious choices. So even from a real practical point of view, why would you not involve that in the way that you do things? It allows people to be so much more creative and tap into that inspiration, doesn't it? So I guess to you and I, it seems like a no-brainer, but
Totally. And we're also, your audience doesn't know this, but we're in conversation about maybe trying to collaborate in terms of some form of leadership retreat. And I've connected with people from around the world, everywhere from the West Coast of the States to Central States to into Europe. And some of these people have come to the realization that nature is our savior, our answer, basically. One woman does forest bathing in the Netherlands. She's brilliant at what she does. Another woman does biomimicry in the States, which is design, using nature's design within organizations and so that we flow with nature's way. Another woman uses Joe Dispenza's work, which is very nature-based. He doesn't call it that, but it is, in terms of mindfulness. So there's this, it seems like this worldwide craving for something really real.
Yeah.
You know, and it's an exciting time.
So with that then, so obviously you are working on your second book that's about to come out. What else, aside from wanting to do, it's almost like a global retreat, isn't it? What else are your aspirations for yourself then?
Well, those are biggies, like the idea of the retreat that's focused on using my book as the overarching theme, and then bringing in these nature-inspired experts, basically, for different reasons. In addition to the mindfulness component, is a huge thing that I'm working on. The new book should be out, I'm hoping, by the end of the fall or by the end of the year at the latest. I'm focusing also on helping clients with hypnotherapy or hypno-coaching, because it is a way for individuals to get out of that usual way of operating with their conscious mind and feel their own nature and tap into something that is deeper. It's almost like the Force in Star Wars, if you think about it. Like Yoda talking about the Force.
I love that. You're turning everybody into Jedi.
Your subconscious mind to program yourself for more success and satisfaction and joy and new possibilities where there weren't previously. So.
Yeah, brilliant. I can see a whole world of Jedis now. It's just, I love it. I love the idea. I love the idea.
You know,
so
it's fun. It's all about play, actually. And in the end, this is the thing that I learned when I was down in South America. And I think it's been part of who I am, but we're going out of a seriousness. Like that's being man's way, being so serious, to a more playful and spontaneous and playful way. And really that is, if you observe nature, that is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Spontaneity, sensitivity, and flow, as you had talked about before, Lisa.
Yeah, I remember doing, I've done a couple of workshops not that long ago, obviously before COVID, where we had, you get a group of adults, you give them a blank sort of like poster of paper, lots of magazines, colouring pencils, sticky back plastic, all the rest of it, and allow them to create that childlike wonder. And it's amazing. They just kind of go into this real wonderment. Or, you get them out in the woods and they're playing, and we forget as adults that, when we were little, we were limitless, weren't we? We could do anything. We would run everywhere. We would play. It was our innate way of being. And I guess the old way conditions that out of us, but I'm hoping that the new way allows us to flow with that more. Yeah, with
Well,
that.
what you said is brilliant, because that way of playing spontaneity and fun and all that. This woman, which I think you should interview, but Kat, the one from the Netherlands, I think you'd find her fascinating to interview. She's a beautiful speaker and she knows her stuff.
Yeah.
But she talks about taking leaders and just people in general into nature. And some of them are skeptical. Like, what am I going to learn? What's the difference between just going for a regular walk in nature? But they use different senses than even our 5-6 senses that we have. They have about 14. And she says the transformation of somebody who's shown how to see and feel things differently, as she takes them through one of these sessions, and it can be as little as 2 or 3 hours. She said there's profound transformation of people, profound. The realizations in their own lives, the feeling of connectedness with nature and other people. And I think that's honestly what people are craving right now, is a sense of true connection.
I think it's almost like we've been brought to a choice point, haven't we? All this staying at home, being separated, not being able to hug our loved ones and our friends and family. It's almost like the universe has said, we're going to really push you to the limit till you realise, you know, at a higher level. It's almost like we've been kind of pushed to the absolute limit of this choice point.
It's interesting you say that, because in Chinese thought, within Taoism and all that, that when you take anything to the extreme, if you take yang, which is more aggressive, more male or whatever, to the extreme, it turns into the female, and the vice versa. The female turns into the male. So we're at a place right now, and there's always paradox in nature. So the more that we're being separated from COVID, right, that we can't interact, the more that we want to come together and we realize each other's value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally paradoxical, but
yeah, I mean, we've seen that. I don't know whether you had that in Canada. Here in the UK, it's stopped now, but for when we were actually in total lockdown, pretty much, every Thursday evening at 8 o'clock, everybody in every neighbourhood came out of their houses with pots and pans and tambourines and music, and they would clap for the carers and the frontline workers in appreciation for them. Now, those people have been doing those amazing jobs, taking care of us for eons. And yet when we were, it just demonstrates that when we were really brought to it, then everybody came out in love and compassion for the work that they were doing to serve us. And celebrated that.
And I'll take it even a step further, not even just the nurses and the doctors, but any of the frontline workers, the people working in grocery stores.
Absolutely.
A lot of people would ignore, you know, or bypass, not even notice. And how important somebody is who brings in the food, who stocks the shelves. There's again, if we talk about that concept of an Atman, seeing them as a being of value that is not just related to what they're doing for us, but who they are beyond all of that.
It's brilliant.
Just their value.
So it's been absolutely fascinating spending time with you. As I ask all of my guests, before we finish, what would be your top tip for life that you could share with the audience?
Well, that's assuming I know something more than you guys, which I don't know if I do, but I have to practice. But
we appreciate any top tips that you might give us.
I think get into nature. It helps. It's not man's way. It'll start changing you right away. Just a hike by yourself or with some loved ones. I think also noticing whatever tension you might have in you. Part of what I talk about here is that it's a mind, body, spirit way of leadership and way of looking at the world. You can't just use your conscious mind and your intellect. It doesn't work. You have to relax the body. And in fact, the Chinese said, to develop the mind, you have to focus on the body. To develop the spirit, you have to focus on the mind. So 3 are completely interrelated. So that's where the Tai Chi, the yoga, the meditation, just general awareness comes in and being part of nature, because you end up relaxing your body and being a lot more sensitive and open and aware to what's out there.
That's brilliant. It's brilliant.
That's my take on it anyway.
Fantastic. It's been my absolute pleasure chatting with you today, Ken. Thank you so much for your insights. I know that people are going to be absolutely fascinated. And can you just hold your book up again, just so that people want to buy your book, they know where they're going to Amazon to find it?
Yeah, so, you can get it on.
Oh, you're just breaking up a little bit.
If you're out in,
you
England,
can get it.
Or on, pardon me?
Yeah.
So, it's available there if you're interested, and the new one should be out probably by the end of the year, and I'll let you know, Lisa, once it's
Oh, I can't wait. So thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Lisa, and we'll touch base afterwards and talk about the 12th. So
thank you.
Thank you.